518-7.
Unmute. Okay. And it's recording. Great. Can you hear me? Yeah. Great. Yes. Welcome, welcome. And so we gather. Welcome.
Hello.
How you doing?
Okay. How about you?
Very well, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is all very surreal. Can't.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap our heads around it. I'm just, kind of nose to the grindstone at this point, and just
Yeah.
with what comes.
I think it's going to be a long haul.
Yeah, I mean, people say we're preparing for at least June 1, that's what we're preparing for, and then perhaps beyond that.
I don't know. It's very scary.
It is. It's a new world. That's for sure. Hello. We also have these new opportunities that we're taking advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, at least we have the technology. I mean,
Right.
I don't know what we would do without this.
Yeah, you're right. Welcome, everybody. So we gather. David Crone, my goodness. No dancing. Yeah, we have to set up some rules. Yeah, so I can mute and unmute Andy at will. How about that? That's an interesting technological advancement.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Where's your webcam, Tanner Levine?
Yeah, we can't see you. We want to see you.
I'm doing 9,000 work pieces at the same time I'm listening, so I didn't want it to be a distraction.
Fair enough.
Looks like the Brady Bunch.
Together now, let's sing.
Andy, I'd like to hear from you. How you doing?
Oh, really? Is he muted or not muted?
He's not muted.
No, he's not muted.
You can
unmute
unmute
this
yourself.
point. Yeah, Maya's. Where's Maya? Yeah, Maya, show your face. How's that? Maya's my producer, and she can allow you to be speak, or she can just mute you. She'll just mute you. But yeah, let's have Andy. Do you want to say a few words of introduction before we begin? Can he hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Mute him. Mute him.
Too much.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Maya. I don't know if Maya did that or not. Yeah, I think she did. Yeah. All right, so time now, 12:01. Maybe wait one more minute for people to join, and then we'll get started.
Good to
So
see
you
you,
can,
Rabbi.
Hey, why can David talk? What's happening right now?
I'm your friend.
Mute that guy.
What?
You're muted. I like this. This is fun. Yeah, is there a filter for a snarky filter? This technology is getting better and better by the day. All right, let's get started. Maya, roll credits.
Zoom at noon, congregation for shalom. Zoom at noon, congregation for shalom. Zoom at noon. Click the link, join the Zoom. Everybody's waiting for you in the room. Mute yourself, focus in, raise your hand if you got a question. Zoom at noon, congregation for shalom. Zoom at noon, congregation for shalom. Zoom at noon.
All right, so that was half successful. Welcome to Zoom at Noon. First, a couple of announcements, and then we'll get right into the text. A couple of announcements are, so we have our full schedule of Zoom at Noon programs. Today is our first day at Zoom at Noon. We're going to be studying a little bit of Kabbalah, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So that's today. Wednesdays is Rabbi's Pick. And so tomorrow we're going to have a comedian, Joel Chasnoff, who lives in Israel but does a lot of touring here in America. He's an amazing story and a great teacher and a comedian. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's tomorrow. Thursday is Rabbi Ariel Scholklapper, who is a director of a meditation organization. He's a advanced meditator who has done 3-week-long silent retreats. And he's an amazing guy, and he's going to lead us in some meditation. That's Thursdays. Friday is Kenner Levine's day. He's teaching a journey through the Shabbat liturgy. And finally, on Mondays, we have our own Chazan in residence, David Krohn, better known as, endearingly known as Chazan David, is going to be doing some teaching with us, sharing his favorite cantors from the Golden Age. And so look forward to that on Mondays. So let's jump right into it. Maya, put up a overview of Kabbalah, what Kabbalah sort of is, and then we're going to get to the text in just a moment. So here's a quick overview. Kabbalah applies to the whole range of Jewish mystical activity. And for Kabbalists, it's not enough just to say that God is unknowable and mysterious, right? That's the sort of rabbinic mainstream take, is that God is unknowable. And that's it. You can only, human beings are limited in their comprehension, and God is infinite. And so we cannot really understand what infinity is, what infinity means, but that's not enough for a Kabbalist. A Kabbalist really wants to know God. What is God? Who is God? And how do we get closer to God? And so for a long time, learning Kabbalah was frowned upon by normal people. The rabbis wanted to hide Kabbalah and keep it a secret from the mainstream. And so there's a classic text that you can see in paragraph 3. The rabbis of the Talmud regarded mystical study as important, but dangerous, right? And so there's a famous Talmudic passage that speaks about Rabbi Azai and Zoma and Elisha ben Abi and Akiva went together and started studying mystical texts. and they all experienced catastrophe, right? So one went crazy, one died. Elisha ben Abuya became a heretic and left Judaism. Only Rabbi Akiva was rabbi enough to handle Kabbalah, and only he left in peace. And so it serves as a warning to us that we have to be careful of Kabbalah, and really the guideline for a long time was, first of all, you have to be over 40. Like, young people aren't allowed to study Kabbalah. Plus, you had to learn all of Torah, all of Mishnah, all of Talmud before you're allowed to delve into the mysteries of the Kabbalah. The most famous work of the Kabbalah is the Zohar, revealed to the Jewish world in the 13th century, and by Shimon Bar Yochai, who is known as the compiler of the Zohar. I say compiler because it goes back, precedes that era of Shimon Bar Yochai. He was really the compiler of the text and the one who made it famous and the disseminator of Kabbalah. In fact, according to the Kabbalah itself, internally, it goes all the way back to Adam Harishon, back to primordial human beings, and it was with us from the very beginning. The Zohar is written in Aramaic, which is the language of the Talmud and the language of the Kaddish, right? And so it was the language that people spoke. So that's the language of the Zohar. It's poetic Aramaic. So scroll down a little bit more, right? And so toward the end, the great scholar and historian of Kabbalah were men like Gershon Sholem, and who studied Kabbalah and studied more than studying Kabbalah. He wasn't really a Kabbalist, but he was an academic who brought the recognition of Kabbalah to the academy and to the public. Gershom Sholem, right? So there's a quote here by one of Gershom Sholem's students: "A scholar of mysticism is like an accountant." Let's see. There we go. He may know. Where did it go? Like an accountant. Who's got it there? Down lower. Good. A scholar of mysticism is like an accountant, right in the middle of the page. He may know where all the treasure is, but he is not free to use it. Just scroll down a little bit more. Thank you. Right, for a university, at the end of the paragraph there, Lieberman said, "It is forbidden to have a course in nonsense," said Shaul Lieberman, right? He was a anti-Kabbalist, but the history of nonsense, now that's scholarship, right? So that was from Lieberman. Shaul Lieberman, chancellor of JTS, right? Kabbalah has long been one of the most important areas of Jewish thought, even though a lot of the mainstream folks have frowned upon it. Personally, I once walked into an Orthodox shul that I was davening at in Los Angeles as a rabbinical student, and there was a box in the lobby, and I looked inside. I couldn't help it. It was a box of books, so I couldn't help but take a peek, and it was a whole set of this beautiful Kabbalah books, right, with commentary and all kinds of, and beautiful binding. And so I walked into the office and asked the rabbi, like, whose is this? What are you doing with this box of, right, Zohar books? And he said, well, someone donated it, but I don't want it here. I said, what? So I took it home, and I still have it on my shelf. That it's really frowned upon in the Orthodox world, in the mainstream world. However, as it says in the last sentence there, Kabbalah today is commonly studied among Hasidic Jews, right? So there are Hasidic Jews and Kabbalist circles in Sfat and Yerushalayim, and among many non-Orthodox Jews who are part of the counterculture. So friends, welcome to the counterculture as we explore some insights in Kabbalah. Let's watch a quick YouTube overview of what Kabbalah is. And then I look forward to delving into the text with you in just a few moments. So please watch this overview of Kabbalah from YouTube. 4 minutes, ready, go. Yeah, share the sound there, Maya. Yeah, we'll start over and she'll get the sound in there so we can do that. Today being our first Zoom at noon, we're working out the kinks a little bit. Please bear with us. Right, so we have two YouTubes that we'll share, and one on overview of the Kabbalah, and the second on the overview of the Sfirot, the Spherotic system that the Kabbalah uses. Let's try again.
At the center of Kabbalah, and by that I mean an ancient mystic stream of Judaism, not this place in LA, at the center of Kabbalah is a book called the Zohar, which is a book that collects knowledge from even older Jewish mystical works. It looks at verses in the Bible and ideas in Judaism through the lens of the 10 Sfirot. Put simply, each of these Sfirot is a way to interact with an aspect of God. Through these Sfirot, the Zohar created new ways to think about lots of the Bible and really to think about Judaism in general, mystical ways. Now, the Zohar was written in the 13th century in a culture where there was both intellectual curiosity and deep religious fervor. In this culture, this was in northern Spain, on one hand, they were influenced by the teachings of Maimonides, who was a Jewish thinker with a Greek philosophical perspective. So he said, you can't ever know what God does, just what God doesn't do. In other words, you shouldn't ever assume God's actions have a direct effect on you. It's an intellectual way to approach God. And then they were influenced by Christian Europe's religious fervor. God has a direct effect on me. So how can God simultaneously have an effect and not have an effect? Mysticism's answer is there are multiple aspects to God. We can't interact with God, who is unknowable, let's say the Ein Sof, but we can interact with 10 constricted aspects of God, the Sfirot. A small group of people wrote about this in 13th century northern Spain. One was Nachmanides in his interpretations of the Torah, and the other was Moshe de Leon, who collected older texts that formed into the Zohar. These older texts focused on trying to understand some difficult sections in the Bible, like the logic behind creation, or the chariot vision of Ezekiel, the apocalyptic visions of Daniel. Notably, only a small group of scholars read any of the Kabbalistic texts, including the Zohar, as it was generally accepted that studying them might drive you mad. That is, until 250 years later. So, 60 years after the Spanish Inquisition, Isaac Luria in Spot entered the picture. To greatly generalize, at this time, Jews were in a down place. The whole focus of the religion was on living in the past and being sad about where we are now, not in Spain having fun. Luria had this revelatory idea to take the principles of Kabbalism found in the Zohar and evolve them. Instead of it mostly being about understanding the Sfirot, Kabbalism was now about collecting sparks. Luria said the world was originally a perfect vessel, but it was destroyed and it's up to us to collect all of the pieces. Each time we do a good deed, we're collecting these sparks and taking another step towards the Messiah. For instance, the way a person held a Kiddush cup could create a spark, as holding it in a certain way showed off God's name. Lots of traditions Jews do to this day were created by Luria and people that followed him. Kabbalat Shabbat, for instance. So with Luria, instead of being sad about the past, suddenly Judaism was about looking towards the future and the hope of salvation by the Messiah. And these thoughts were wildly popular. It got people to follow many more traditions, and it significantly spread Kabbalah. It continued to grow until it brought about the Messiah. It brought about someone who claimed to be the Messiah, and this threw a major wrench in people's faith in the movement. So the story continues with this guy Shabtai Tzvi. He was a false Messiah. He was a person who almost brought down Judaism.
Beautiful, thank you, Maya. And so that was brought to you by a company called Bim Bam. That's a nice overview. And you saw a really quick smackdown of the Kabbalah Center at the very beginning. The guy said, the real Kabbalah, not like the one that you have from the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, and then he went on to speak about Kabbalah. And so there is a movement called the Kabbalah Center. Rabbi Berg, I believe is his name. And they sort of are this idiosyncratic, quirky, non-mainstream purveyors of Kabbalah, and who, from their opinion, they have sort of ownership of modern resurrection of Kabbalah. But that's not the direction that we're going to be going in this class. We're going to hit the text. We're going to go in just a few minutes. We're going to learn some authentic Kabbalistic text. It's not the Zohar, but later works that delve into some of the concepts of the Kabbalah, the purpose of creation, of meaning. And so one more video before we begin, and then we'll jump to the text. I'll explain the text and then how we're going to engage in that text, and then learn a little bit of that text. Today is a introductory lesson, and so we're spending some more time getting context of Kabbalah, getting context of the text that we're about to learn. But moving forward, we're going to really focus on the text itself and going through the text. Also in future, I'm going to be projecting the text today, but for future classes, I'll send out chunks of PDFs of the text that we're going to learn each week. So one more quick overview of the Sfirot, and then we'll get started. This one's 3.5 minutes.
In the beginning, God decided to do the impossible, to create a finite, diverse universe within his infinite, indivisible self. God first created the mystical Sefirot, 10 divine channels through which his infinite light could be condensed, contracted, and then released as individualized attributes that could eventually give rise to a diversity of finite creations. Let us make man in our own image, said God. No sooner said than done. Man was created in his Creator's image, with his own internal set of 10 attributes through which he operates. These 10 spiritual attributes are reflected in the physical human anatomy. Let's go through them one by one. Sephira 1, Chachma. Chachma is the initial seed of an idea, the flash of undeveloped inspiration. It enables us to be creative, spiritual, transcendent. Sephira 2, Bina. Bina is the development of ideas. It enables us to be logical, analytical, organized. Sephira 3, Dot. Dot allows us to focus on an idea so that it becomes relevant and personally meaningful. It enables us to be attentive, principled, involved. Sephira 4, Chesed. Chesed is the power to love, share, and look kindly upon others. It enables us to be generous, optimistic, sociable. Sephira 5, Gevura. Gevura is the power of discipline and restraint. It enables us to be calculated, cautious, serious. Sephira 6, Tiferet. Tiferet is the power to empathize and to harmonize kindness with strictness based on the needs of others. It enables us to be balanced, empathetic, harmonious. Sephira 7, Netzach. Netzach is the power of determination to overcome challenge. It enables us to be persistent, forceful, daring. Sephira 8, Hod. Hod is the power of humility, gratitude, and submitting to a higher cause. It enables us to be thankful, devoted, accommodating. Sephira 9, Yesod. Yesod is the power to focus on others and to build genuine relationships. It enables us to be selfless, altruistic, loyal. And last, but not at all least, Sephira 10, Malchut. Malchut has multiple functions. It is the power of speech and action, effective communication and leadership, and to be receptive to others. It enables us to be leading, communicating, achieving. So there you have it, the 10 components of the human self. The internal mechanism upon which all intellect, emotion, and actions run. God used 10 Sephirot to create his universe, and we use our 10 Sephirot to shape our miniature universes.
Beautiful. All right, so the text that we're going to be learning is a text written by Rav Yehuda Ashlag, and it's called the Peticha L'Chachmat Kabbalah, the opening to the wisdom of Kabbalah. And so that's the text that we're going to be using. In addition to that text, there's an overlay, a commentary by Rav Yehuda Leib Halevi Ashlag, by Rav Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, who wrote an overlay, a commentary to this sort of esoteric basic text. And so let's take a look at the author of the original text, Rav Ashlag. So we're learning Ashlag, Kabbalah with an overlay by Rav Gottlieb. So a quick overview of who this man is, who Rav Yehuda Leib Halevi Ashlag is. All right, here's the Bala Sulam, the climber of the ladder. And so that's what he looks like there on the right. Rav Yehuda Leib Halevi Ashlag lived from 1885 to 1954, known as the Baal HaSulam. So he's a modern Kabbalist, and he wrote his commentary, is most famously known for his commentary on the Zohar. He dedicated his life to the interpretation and disseminations of ideas found in the Kabbalah. He was born in Warsaw, 1885, ordained as a rabbi at 19 years old, and then served the community as a dayan, as a judge and a teacher in Warsaw. In 1921, immigrated to Israel and settled in the Ir Atikah in the holy city of Jerusalem, where he became known as an authority and great teacher in Kabbalah. So he became a leader in Kabbalah, particularly known on Polish Jews. He moved in due course to Givat Shaul, which is a new neighborhood in Jerusalem, where he served as the rabbi. So he was a man of the people. In the 1920s and 30s, he started publishing his first books. There you go, the Parashas Sulam, the commentary to the ladder of the Zohar, and then the book that we're going to be studying is called the Peticha L'Chachmat Kabbalah. So let's go to that introduction now and take a look at what Rav Mordechai Gottlieb says to introduce the actual text. The Peticha L'Chachmat Kabbalah, the opening to the wisdom of the Kabbalah, is the most essential spiritual writings that exist in the world, right? And so here we go. We're going to be exposed to and learn from what is known as the most essential spiritual writings that exist in the world, right? So it's coming from the Baal HaSulam, the climber of the spiritual ladder, who distilled all of his learning and his Torah into this document, and then it gets expounded by Rav Gottlieb. So in a few short pages, Rav Yehuda Leib Halevi Ashlag, the Baal HaSulam, the master of the spiritual ladder that climbs and touches the divine, describes for us a brief summary of the spiritual structure at the root of all reality. And so that's what the Kabbalah is concerned with. What is life? What is God? What is this universe? What are we doing here? The Peticha L'Chachmat Kabbalah is a condensed summary of the Baal HaSulam's monumental work, Talmud Eser Sfirot, which is a much longer, extensive commentary on the Arizal, the Rav Yitzchak Luria's work called the Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life. Right? And so as you can see, it gets distilled and distilled and distilled down to its spiritual essence, which is what we're going to be learning. And because it's in this distilled form, it requires a little bit of opening, right? Much like a beautiful scotch, you have to put in a little water to bring out the flavors. We're going to be doing just that. We're going to be looking at this distillation of spiritual wisdom, the most essential spiritual wisdom in the universe, and adding our own little commentary and explanatory notes by Rav Gottlieb and ourselves. The Eitz Chaim is one of the most significant spiritual works in the existence, describing the intricate details of the spiritual structure of reality, etc., etc. It's over 2,000 pages. Scroll down, Maya, a little bit further. So if we realize the spiritual significance of these most holy words, then there is great apprehension in the thought of attempting to translate them. And so Rav Gottlieb goes into this translation with deep humility. On the other hand, as long as these words remain untranslated, and this most profound and most powerful spiritual information remains concealed for most of the world, right? So he felt compelled to translate it for us for the American reader, for spiritual seekers, because it contains the deepest, most powerful wisdom in all the world. Rav Gottlieb's commentary brings these spiritual understandings to an unprecedented level of clarity. Divine, right? And so the final sentence, the Baal HaSulam teaches us that the purpose of learning this wisdom is not an intellectual pursuit necessarily, but rather to help us in realizing our spiritual potential and working towards the transformation of our inner desire towards union with our divine source in the state of unconditional love and coming to truly care for one another. So not only is this sort of an intellectual pursuit, it is, but in addition, it's also a spiritual pursuit. And so that's what great Torah learning is all about. And with that, we'll recite our bracha. So our bracha for learning Torah is la'asok b'divrei Torah. Not only lilmod Torah, not only are we going to be studying text, but we're going to be internalizing it. We're going to be integrating the information. So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu v'stav etzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And so let's scroll down a little bit more. And so to understand how this printing works, a little bit up. Here we go. Up. Here we go. The Hebrew, the translation of the Peticha, right, the actual text direct from Rav Ashlag are printed in bold. The Hebrew words that are transliterated are printed in italics, and the clarifications, elucidations of Rav Gottlieb are printed in the regular typeface. So first we're going to have the Hebrew text, and then followed by the English text. For our purposes, we're going to be delving into the English text. So Maya, if you'll scroll past the Hebrew text, we're going to first read the actual words from Rav Ashlag, and then we're going to be able to explain it. So these are the bold words. This is the distillation. This is the ambiguous and abstract distillation of wisdom that Rav Ashlag collected through his years of study of Kabbalah. And so we're going to go through it relatively quickly because we want to spend most of our time on Rav Gottlieb's elucidation of this ambiguous, challenging, abstract text. So I'm going to just read it through quickly. And again, for next week, we're going to hand them out so you can print them and have them for yourselves. But for now, follow along on the screen. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. We will not understand the details or the meaning necessarily of what I'm about to read. But then Rav Gottlieb is going to explain it paragraph by paragraph as we move forward, and that's when we'll really be able to engage more intellectually in the text. So listen to how the words sound in the translation, and try to follow along as best you can to this abstract text. Rav Hananya ben Akashya says, the Holy One, blessed be he, the Holy Blessed One, wanted to give merit to Israel and therefore gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvot. As is written, God desires for the sake of righteousness to magnify the Torah, yagdil Torah v'yadir, and to make it glorious. It is known that to merit, zechut, is grammatically related to the word to purify. Is dachachut. This is in accordance with that which is written. The mitzvot were given only in order to purify Israel. We need to understand this purification that we receive through Torah and mitzvot, and to understand what it is in ourselves that we need to refine and purify through Torah and mitzvot. We have already discussed this in my books, Panim Masbirot and Talmud Eser Sfirot. To repeat briefly here we go. The thought of creation was to give pleasure to the created beings, with this gift being in accordance with the Creator's supernal generosity. Because of this, it was imprinted in the souls a will and great desire to receive this shefa, this abundant goodness from God. This is because the desire to receive is the vessel for the measure of pleasure experienced in the shefa. Again, we're going to explain all this in Rav Gottlieb's explanatory notes. According to the measure of the desire to receive the shefa, so is the corresponding measure of pleasure in the experience of the shefa, no more and no less. They are so intimately connected to one another that we do not differentiate between them except for in the terms of their relationship. The pleasure is associated with the shefa. The desire to receive the shefa is associated with the created being who receives the shefa. These both spread out from the Creator and are necessarily rooted in the thought of creation. Masa Bereshit. We differentiate between them in that the Shefa comes from the essence of the Creator, spreading out something, from that which already is, while the desire to receive included there is the source of the created beings, the source of something newly created, brought out something from nothing. Yesh me'ayin. This is because in the essence of God, there is, of course, no aspect whatsoever of desire to receive. We can therefore say that this desire to receive that we are speaking about is the entire material of creation from beginning to end. This is the extent, almost done here. This is, where did we say, this is to the extent, there, thank you, that all the countless types of created beings and all their happenings beyond measure and all their behaviors in the past and that which will be in the future are nothing other than different measures and values of the desire to receive. That's everything, the desire to receive. And everything that there is in the created beings, meaning everything that is received and the desire to receive, imprinted in their nature, all spreads out from God's essence, something from something. It's not at all an aspect of something newly created, something from nothing, because it is not something new at all. It spreads out from the eternity of God, something from something. There you go. So that's the whole first paragraph of Rav Ashlag's opening to the wisdom of the Kabbalah. And now let's break it down and figure out what the heck we just read. All right, so here we go. So we're gonna break it down piece by piece. First, right, the first paragraph, which is Rav Hananya ben Akashya said that God gave us Torah and mitzvot for our own purification. God wanted to give merit to Israel and therefore gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvot. As it is written, God desires for the sake of righteousness to magnify the Torah and make it glorious. It is known that to merit, these kotet Israel is grammatically related to the word to purify. Here we go. We find, this is Rav Gottlieb's, right, in the regular text, the non-bold. This is Rav Gottlieb's explanatory notes. We find that Rabbi Hananya ben Akashya is saying that the Holy One, Blessed One, wanted to purify Israel. The meaning is to purify and refine. As for example, refined olive oil, which is called in Hebrew, shemen zait zach, right? And there's that shoresh, lis kotet Israel, zach, which means to purify, which means clean, pure olive oil. This refinement is acquired by Torah and the spiritual work of the mitzvot. By learning Torah, which is what we're doing right now, right? And the big, not the 5 books of Moses, of course, not the Tanakh, but in the largest definition of what Torah is, we're learning Jewish wisdom and the spiritual work of mitzvot, and complying to and practicing and the discipline of mitzvot is the way that Jews refine themselves. And that's what God wants us to do. We find that the only purpose of Torah and mitzvot is to purify and refine ourselves. That's, according to Rav Ashlag, through Rav Gottlieb's interpretation, is what the purpose of Judaism, of Torah and mitzvot is, to purify ourselves and to refine ourselves. This is in accordance that which is written, the mitzvot were given only in order to purify Israel. Tziruf, the Hebrew word in this verse meaning to purify, also has the same meaning of cleansing. And now we're going to get into goldsmithing and metallurgy. And so if there's anybody on this call who knows about gold and the process of making gold, that would be very helpful. Raise your hand electronically or physically if you do, and Maya, keep a lookout for that if anybody has any insight into how to make gold. The goldsmith separates the waste matter from the gold and combine, here's the analogy, right? So here we go. The goldsmith separates the waste matter from the gold and combines the clean parts of the gold to one another. The text is a little messed up there, Maya. And so it needs to be the actions of a person to send out, thank you, all the impure aspects from within the soul and to combine together all the parts which are good. So we want to get rid of all the impure aspects that are within us and combine all of the good parts in order to become a vehicle of godliness. Likewise, when all Israel throws away the impurity of our aspect of our individual self, concern, which divides us, we become unified as one entity. So he defines impurity here, Rav Gottlieb does. He defines impurity as individual self-concern. right? So when we throw away the impurity, which is our individual self-concern, that's considered things that divide us, we become unified as one entity. When gold comes out of the earth, it is full of impurities and doesn't look like precious gold at all. The gold needs to undergo a process of refinement. When we are, right, that's what we need to do too, right? Parts of us are pure, parts are impure, and what we need to do is go through a process of refinement. Through this process, the impurities that are within the gold slowly fall away. It's not an overnight process, right? It's gradual. It's a work of a lifetime. The gold undergoes this process over and over until there remains pure gold within its dross and impurities. Likewise, a person needs to clean themselves time after time, going up and down. This is not a straightforward journey. This is a series of journeys. And in Kabbalistic Hasidic thought, there's actually 42 journeys that we go through in our lifetime. And we go up and we go down and we go up and we go down. And it's a work of a lifetime. Sometimes the impurity takes control of the person. And sometimes the purity takes control of a person. And it switches back and forth until slowly, the strength of the purity and cleanliness becomes greater than the impurity of the person's desire to receive. And so here we see another aspect of what it means to be impure, according to Rav Gottlieb's overlay of Rav Ashлаг's text, which is the desire to receive. And so we'll see that as it passes through. We'll see that also. So here we go. So we'll do one more paragraph. We need to understand that this purification that we achieve, so the text is a little bit messed up again, we need to understand that the purification that we achieve through Torah and mitzvot, and to understand what it is in ourselves that we need to refine and purify through Torah and mitzvot. Here we go, Rav Gottlieb. The opposite of refinement is coarseness. The intention, however, is not necessarily a physical coarseness. We're not talking about a physical coarseness. We're talking about an analogy, of course, and a metaphor. So what is coarseness? A desire to receive physical pleasures, but it is also referring to a spiritual coarseness. One obvious coarseness is the desire, the overwhelming desire to receive physical pleasure. Meaning a desire, so, right? But there's another coarseness that we're referring to here, which is a spiritual coarseness. A person who is concerned only with themselves and their desires is called an unrefined person and coarse person. And this is true even of a person whose desire is for spirituality, right? How ironic, right? The person who is on a spiritual quest, but it's only for themselves. It's considered selfish and coarse, right? So even as we're going along this spiritual refinement path, we can't only be concerned with our own journeys. We have to be concerned with the people around us. Therefore, the question is, what is the coarseness within ourselves that we need to refine by Torah and mitzvot? It is so extremely important to delineate the definition of coarseness. In the holy books dealing with our inner spiritual work, it discusses the concept of removing from our possession leavened bread during the festival of Passover, right, which is the time we're in today, right? How beautiful. With the bread being a metaphor for our negative inclinations. What these negative inclinations actually are, however, is a notion that's very obscure, right? And so that's the work that we're going to do together, is figuring out what the Kabbalah means by impurity, right? As Fred points out, right? We are born pure, right? We are born pure, but through the course of our lifetimes, our souls become broken and challenged. And so they become impure as we grow and experience and get hurt and develop bad habits. And so this is the spiritual quest that we're on, is to eliminate, to get rid of, to expunge that chametz, all those impurities, that leaven, that arrogance, that selfishness that we have allowed. Well, I don't know if we've allowed it, but that has entered our souls and causes these impurities. We want to get rid of these impurities and connect all those purities that are within us naturally. Sometimes the person doesn't even know where to begin with all these various parts, right? Pride, craving, jealousy, as it is the nature of the divine light to delineate everything in clarity and simplicity. As the light itself is simple, so here our Rabbi, the Bala Sulam, Rav Ashlag, delineates here in the most clear possible terms. What is the point that separates us from God? And that on this point we need to work. What's the point of separation from God? I think we have time for one more paragraph. To briefly repeat here, it says the Rav Ashlag in the bold text, the thought of creation was to give pleasure to the created beings, with this gift being in accordance with God's supernal generosity. Question. Right, so the thought of creation was to give pleasure to the created beings. All God wanted to do is give us pleasure. Why did God create humanity? Why did God create the universe? Because God wanted to give pleasure to the created beings, with this gift being in accordance with the Creator's supernal generosity. God is infinitely generous and needed a recipient, needed a vessel to pour all of this generosity into. And so here we go. The thought of creation was to give pleasure to the created beings. Question. How is that possible? Is the desire of the Creator, which is the desire to give goodness to the creation, a desire that has a connotation of lack? If God is truly all and everything, then God can't have a lack, a need. God doesn't need anything, right? So is it possible, we asked Rav Gottlieb in a rhetorical question, is it possible that God needed lack? God needed something, that God had some sort of lacking in God? Is the Creator lacking to give goodness to this creation? God needed to do something? The answer is no. But we're really not capable of understanding this, because all of our desires are an expression of lack. When we desire something, it's because we have something lacking in ourselves. This is not so in the divine reality, where the desire to give goodness is not in the realm of lack. God has a desire without a lack. So it's impossible for us to really comprehend that, but that's what Rav Gottlieb is teaching. The divine reality is that God has a desire without a lack. And this we are not able to understand. The concept is described in the verse, and here's a beautiful verse from the Psalms. You created this Leviathan to play with, right? So there's this really weird sentence, pasuk, in the Psalms. It's the psalm that we recite for Rosh Chodesh. Psalm, I forgot what number it is. If anybody remembers, send a chat. You created this Leviathan to play with him, right? It's an expression of God. You are so great. You created everything in its season and everything in its time. This beautiful system of the planet and earth. And you even created this Leviathan, this giant whale, this giant sea creature to toy with. And so it's this weird verse that Rav Gottlieb picks up on. The Leviathan is grammatically related to the Hebrew words levi and lelavot, meaning connection and attachment. As in the verse, this time my husband will yilaveh, levi, will attach to me. This hints to the subjective connotation of connection and attachment to God. So here we go. The connection and attachment that the created beings have to the Creator, along with the whole system of the fixing of creation, through which can be merited the purpose of creation, which is the revelation of God in the world. All this is called Leviathan. All this system of giving and receiving and creating a lack in human beings, this is all called Leviathan. You have created this Leviathan to play with him. You create this Leviathan. Explanation, from the perspective of God, it's like playing, right? So the desire that we're describing, the divine desire that we're describing, isn't coming from a place of lack. What is it coming from? A place of playing, a place of joyful interaction, like playing. And that it doesn't come out of necessity or lack. And so how could it be that God desires to give when we know that God is whole and complete and all and everything? And the answer is God doesn't have a lack, right? This kind of desire that we're describing, desire to give to creations, isn't because God has a lack and needs, recognition, connection. It's because God is plain. God doesn't have any lack. Rather, God wants to interact with us in a joyful, fulfilling, playful way. Isn't that a beautiful, right? Right? Like it's an act of intimacy. It's a right, playfulness can run really deep in terms of intimacy, in terms of teaching, in terms of connection. So it's not coming from a lack, it's coming from a playfulness, which is just a beautiful way to comprehend theology, a way for us to understand our relationship with God as a dodi, right? As a lachad dodi, as a lover and playmate, rather than how the mainstream rabbinic community perceives God, which is typically more of a commander and a commander. And so here you go. So let's look what's next, and we're gonna start winding down. But we'll give a teaser for next week. Because of this, it was imprinted in the soul's will, a great desire to receive this shefa. Because of this, human beings were created with great desire and great lack, because God wanted to interact with us in this playful way and give us. So in order for God to be able to give to humanity, human beings needed to be created with a great lack and a great desire, a thirst for connection and sustenance and interaction and love and community and spirituality and meaning, so that God could give us, because God wanted to give. That's the purpose of creation. And so because of this, it was imprinted in the souls of human beings a will and a great desire to receive this shefa, this abundant goodness from God. This is because the desire to receive is the vessel for the measure of pleasure experienced in the shefa, in the divine flow. According to the measure of the desire to receive the shefa, so is the corresponding measure of pleasure in the experience of the shefa. No more, no less. It's a perfect equation. Right? The more we need, the more we lack, the more we receive, the more pleasure that the cosmic system experiences. And it's an exact measure. And so we need to, God placed within us an infinite measure of lack and need in order to fulfill that lack and need abundantly. And you can kind of sense where this is going, right? It explains, so why were you so needy? Why are human beings created the way we are, with such lack, illness, and loneliness, and issues, and fragility and vulnerability? Because, right, because God wanted to create this relationship. God wanted to create a desire to receive in order to fulfill that desire with shefa, with the divine flow. And so that's where we're kind of going, to explain why we have this appetite, how we handle this appetite to receive so much. And so that's going to be the start of next week as we continue next Tuesday. So let's close now with a couple of questions. So Maya, if you have any sort of comments or questions, we'll do a few minutes on that, and we want to end at 1. We're going to end with a mourner's Kaddish that we usually, when we end classes in learning Torah, we say the Kaddish de Rabbanan, the rabbi's Kaddish for learning. But because of the situation that we're in and our desire and yearning for that connection for our mourners, we're going to end with the mourner's Kaddish instead. So yeah, a couple of quick comments or questions, and then we'll begin to wrap up. Maya, anybody in particular raising their hand? Nope. Okay, good. So let's move to a mourner's Kaddish. Are there mourners present who want to recite the mourner's Kaddish in particular? Rona, anybody else? All right, so maybe can you unmute Rona and show, do you have a mourner's Kaddish text in front of you? Can you find one? You have a Siddur or something like that? Can you unmute Rona? And Gail, yeah, anybody, let's unmute everybody for a moment. How about that?
Unmuted me.
Thank you. Let's unmute everybody.
I
and
just
so
don't
that
have
we
a
can...
screen. I can't see anybody.
Oh, okay. So we're all here. Do you want to can you put everybody on the screen for a moment?
I don't know what happened. I lost it.
Okay. Okay, we're going to unmute everybody. And so the halacha is that we can recite the Mourner's Kaddish in a minyan. And a minyan on Zoom constitutes a minyan. As long as we can see each other and hear each other, that's what's important. Let's all unmute ourselves and so that we can respond amen to the mourners. It'll be a little cacophonous, but we'll do our best to hear the mourners Kaddish for the mourners that are reciting it, and to respond amen for those who are supporting those who are reciting the mourners Kaddish. So friends, so please join me. We're ready. Echad, Shtaim, Shalosh. Yitgadal, v'yitgadash, Shemei Rabbi. Be'alma, Divra, Kirute, Be'amlich, Malchute. V'chai Echon, V'yom Echon, V'chayed, L'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'zman Karviv, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Lomei Omaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesha, Brichu. Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata da'amidama mimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Amen. May the one who makes peace above bring peace and comfort to all of us below. And together we say, Amen. So let's mute everybody for just a moment. And so just a explanation that we're doing today. Typically, when we study text, we're trying to, especially in a Jewish environment, we're integrating the text, we're debating the text, arguing with the text, grappling with the text, struggling with the text. But this kind of learning is a little bit different, which is what we're trying to do is understand the text. We don't necessarily have to agree with it, but what we're after is to really try to comprehend where the Kabbalah is coming from, where Rav Ashlag is coming from, regardless of whether we agree with it or disagree with it. We can do that integration after we first comprehend what it is they're trying to teach us. And in my opinion, it's a very deep and important lesson. You don't have to agree with that statement either. But I think that the objective and the style of learning is more receiving, is more passive than typically we do in Jewish style of learning. And so it's a way of just explanation and apologies for those who are used to a more didactic, dialogical, I'll say dialogical for now, style of learning. It's a more open, I invite you all to be open vessels and to hear the voice of Rav Ashlag, who has compiled all of these and integrated all of these amazing spiritual masters over the years, integrated them into a relatively simple yet comprehensive look at the heart and soul and wisdom of the Kabbalah. And so let's wrap up with Maya, roll the credits. We'll see if it works better this time. And we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, go for it.
Zoom at noon, Zoom at noon. Congregation, bring shalom, Zoom at noon.
Maya? It's not working. All right, it's now working. We'll work on fixing that. We've got a great theme song called for Zoom at Noon. So again, the schedule tomorrow is special guest star comedian Joel Chasnoff. Thursday, meditation with Rabbi Schulklopper. Friday, Kenna Levine. And Monday, we're gonna learn the golden age of cantors with David Crone. David, say a few words about your class on Monday. Can you unmute David? Is he not there? Not there, okay. So Monday, you better believe it, he'll be here doing his class. Yeah, so thank you so much for participating. And unmute everybody and we can all just say our farewells and shalom alechems. And so it's really great to see everybody's face and names. So shalom and lehitraot. See you this evening at 6:15. And great to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
you.
Love you.